And now we present to you Thac0 with Advantage.
Welcome to Thac0 with Advantage. We're two friends who have been playing D&D for a long time. Wait, 1, 2, 3? While we still love lots of other RPGs,
D&D is the game that keeps coming back and giving us gifts year after year after year. So we're going to review our year in 2024 and think about what's exciting for 2025.
Hi, I'm Ange, and I've been gaming for over 3 decades. Started with first edition, and I haven't stopped yet. I've been writing for Gnome Stew for a decade now, and I run the Gnomecast, the Stew's podcast.
I'm Chris. That was me that you heard at the end of that introduction. I edit podcasts. I play games. I produce podcasts. I play games. I host and guest on podcasts, and I play games. There's a theme somewhere in there.
I'm Jared, the review gnome at Gnome Stew. When I started gaming, the doomsday clock was at 3 to midnight, and I'm still here at 90 seconds to midnight, so I guess I'm writing this out to the end. In addition to writing reviews at Gnome Stew, I've got my own website, whatdoiknowjr.com, where I write additional reviews and opinion pieces on a variety of RPGs.
So wait a minute, was it 3 minutes to midnight or 3 hours to midnight? Because that's going to tell me a lot more about like how...
3 minutes.
Okay.
3 minutes. 1984 was 3 minutes.
I knew that's what you were referencing, but you said 3 to minutes. I just wanted to clarify.
After we look at the games we're running in the campaign journal, we're going to talk about our review of 2024 fantasy gaming and a look ahead to 2025. Then we'll have some recommendations of D&D related content for you to check out in our downtime research segment.
Now stand by for station identification. This is WD&D the Role Player. Now we're going to McElroy McKinney and the Bardic College.
Welcome to 2024. This year saw the most recent update to the D&D core rules after D&D 5th edition was published in 2014. Now, 10 years before that, we were just a year past the 3.5 version of D&D 3rd edition. 10 years before that, DSR was getting ready to publish the revised version of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition rulebooks. 10 years before that, the final episode of the D&D Saturday morning cartoon aired, which, I feel compelled to mention because the D&D cartoon characters are everywhere in the 2024 rulebooks.
Let me just finish up this campaign journal.
You are asking me to remember what happened last year. Since we last recorded, I did get to play in both of the alternating Saturday games, but we've also missed a session of each of those since then, because it's been a month since we last recorded, because we took the holidays off. So in my gaming, we wrapped up the Cygnus de Gure game, either permanently or for the time being. We'll see if we end up going back to that campaign and those characters. In that one, we took on the Minotaurs trying to summon Baphomet. There was a maze and everything. We were able to convince some of them that we were trying to stop the summoning and they didn't want the summoning. So they helped us get through the maze to the big fight. And we were going to try and stop the summoning, but of course, we still had to fight Baphomet because, of course, he was summoned just as we arrived. The funny thing was, there was a bear folk priest behind the summoning who was staying as far away from us as possible and taunting us the whole time. But Wonder, our Tabaxi rogue, was having none of that. He spent his entire turn getting from one side of the giant chamber to the other, so he was right next to the bear priest, and then proceeded to murderize him, because when you are playing a swashbuckler rogue, you don't need an ally next to the target for you to get your sneak attack damage. So I think Wonder took him out in like 1 round, but then the rest of the fight with actual Baphomet was pretty tough. It was a little touch and go for a while, but we did end up killing him and sending that demon, right? Not a devil, back to where he came from.
You don't remember from last year? I thought you went through this already.
That's the joke, Chris.
I was just putting a hat on it.
We did do a little bit of epiloguing to clean up for the campaign and ended up with our characters headed back to Waterdeep for some well-deserved R&R. In the other Saturday game, The Poisoned Kingdom, where we are playing awakened anthropomorphic pets, we delved further into the poisoned land, fighting a bunch of nasty undead and the like, and got closer to where we were heading. We played the session fairly light because we were missing a player, and Les, the GM, didn't want to really dive into major story content without all of us there. And hence, they have now been introduced to the bane of every GM everywhere as you try and balance getting through the story of your game while having all of your players present. Weather permitting, we are supposed to be playing the Poison Kingdom game in person this weekend.
Nothing's going to get done because her friends distract her. I know because I put a promo together about that.
I mean, it's going to be people in person. I get to see their faces. We're getting good pizza. And I have a present to give all of them. So, yeah, there's going to be distraction. But we'll still get some stuff done. And then on the next Saturday, I will be beginning my Tales of the Valiant game where I'm going to be running the adventures of Tales of the Old Margrave.
I can't wait to hear the gaming recap, the campaign journal from that session, Ange, because it'll be like, my friends distracted me. I don't remember what happened. We just ate food.
I mean, it's still close enough to the holidays that everyone has no idea what day it is and is full of cheese.
Yeah, there you go. So me, I don't really run D&D right now since we took a break from the Heroes of Havel's Way. I am running the massive Nyarlathotep campaign as a Call of Cthulhu campaign with the pulp dials turned all the way up. I'm also running a game of Rapscallion, which is a pirate PBTA game from Magpie Games, which is a ton of fun. I highly recommend that game when it actually comes out in full. I'm like trying to hack together stuff between the PDF that was released to the backers, like the final version, and all the playbooks that were not updated. So boy, is that a nightmare. Let me tell you. Hey, Magpie, not that anybody's listening to this from Magpie, but fix your playbooks. Please, I'd appreciate that. Third, I'm running a short campaign of mine and Brett from Gaming and BS's fame, the Streets of Avalon role-playing game. So that's been going on since last year.
Now, is that its own system?
Yep, its own game. I made it myself.
Because if I remember correctly, the original book was meant to be a supplement for 5th edition.
It was, but 5th edition is a terrible game for fantasy city gaming that doesn't supposed to have clerics or gods or things like that in it. So, you know, just throwing that one out there. Like, I mean, I love me some D&D, don't get me wrong. Just, it doesn't do everything. Like, it's really hard to strip out all the gods and the magic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Since none of those games are D&D, I won't talk about them, but on the D&D front, I am writing adventures for Accidental Cyclops' Surviving Strange Hollow game that's coming out in 2025. Like, for them. Like, it's a 12-adventure campaign that I'm working on with Sean Merwin. He's the lead.
Nice.
I'm one of the adventure writers, along with Kat Kruger and Marcello Valles. I'm going to screw up your name, Marcello, if you hear this, sorry. Marcello Velasquez, each writing 4 of the 12 adventures. They're not all that long. They're meant to be played in around 3 hours each, but they tell a pretty compelling story about Strange Hollow, which, if you're wondering what Strange Hollow is, I would say it's as if adventurers were entering the magical Amazon jungle in the early 1900s. So it's unexplored. There's lots of wildlife. It's dangerous adventure, and there's like mysteries to uncover. It's also got a bit of Alice in Wonderland vibe to it, and I would say a healthy dose of where the wild things are. The oil
Nice.
painting from the original art books give it that vibe. I love it. It's so much fun to read and study up on.
Nice. All right. Well, the Thursday night game has not yet resumed. However, shockingly, I still had gaming going on in December. We got 2 sessions in of my face-to-face Curse of Strahd game. I am so happy with how that game is developing. We're up to 5 players now, and everybody's getting a much better handle on the rules, and everybody really kind of dove into their character to begin with, so it wasn't as much growing into those characters because they were already embracing that right from the start. We've gotten to the point in Curse of Strahd where they have the summons from Strahd to come have dinner with him at Castle Ravenloft. They did not want to go, so they asked the Seneschal if they could go check out the winery first and then come back to him because it's just down the road a little bit. As they go down the road, they're sitting here trying to figure out what are we going to do, and they ran into a werewolf. They cut a deal with the werewolf that they're going to investigate why there are all these little blight horror plants running around that have wolfsbane growing through them, if he will go back and convince the Seneschal that they're all dead.
That's a great plan, actually. It won't work because we all know that Strahd will know, but it's a great plan.
Yeah. Strahd is the land, famously.
Yeah. I mean, if he wasn't, and they knew better, but they don't know. It's the best part about that game, Jared, is they just don't know, right?
Oh, yeah. Throughout the 2 sessions, they killed the main druid that is in the winery. Unfortunately, the stat block they gave him, even though he was the leader and he had the staff that they were supposed to have and break, is just a normal CR2 druid. And this is a party of 5th level characters.
I.e., he's squishy.
Yeah, when you say normal CR2 Druid, you're talking about when that book was published too, which is a long time ago.
Correct.
Which is not CR2 Druid from today or CR2 Druid from the 2024 book.
Correct.
2025 book, my bad. It's not coming out this year.
Yeah.
Last year? Boy, I am so screwed up, Ange. This is your fault. You said it earlier. The timeline is just not working properly today.
Yeah. I mean, you need a good 2 weeks before it settles into your brain that it is no longer the previous year and now it is the next year.
So one of the things about Curse of Strahd is, I've seen a lot of people say this and I would agree, the winery and Yester Hill are kind of the least horror kind of parts of this and the most standard D&D, and also not as interesting as the rest of the game when you actually have horrific things happening left and right, and this is just sort of like, hey, there's evil druids, you should clean them out. So I improvised a little bit there. There's a point where there's some were-ravens that could ally with them, but for some reason they don't, and that's part of why I came up with the mistletoe thing. And that also helped to drive a wedge between some factions that all answer to Strahd but don't necessarily like each other. So that kind of casts the werewolves as being in opposition to this this druid cult. I added some texture there.
As you do, as you do.
That's cool. I like that. You should always improvise. Make it your own.
Yeah. And you know, in response to what happened with the poor CR2 druid in the last one, I went through and actually I used the Tales of the Valiant, the Monster Vault version of druids and berserkers that were in there, because a lot of the things in the Monster Vault have extra like reactions or bonus actions that were not in those stat blocks originally that make them a little bit more interesting. And they also flesh out those druids so that they do what a lot of the spellcasters do now, where they have a spell-like attack and they can replace an attack with casting the regular spell casting. That was much better. I like that a lot better. And I used the Apostle stat block from the Tome of Beasts 2, swapped out all of its divine spells for primordial spells, and used the Apostle as their big druid that they needed to get rid of. So, and then on top of that, we had a lair action that was going on that either the storm did something or the Gulthias tree itself did something. So every round, things were happening, like either lightning was striking the ground or the Gulthias tree was sending up roots and grabbing their feet. It was a lot of fun. This druid did not last as long as I would have liked him to, but that's because everyone ganged up on him, and that was fine. He got to turn into a swarm of death butterflies, and that was the main thing I wanted to accomplish with him.
Death butterflies, I love it. Hey, Jared, I just had a thought. We should do an episode on lair actions.
We should.
You should.
We definitely should.
We really need to do an episode on lair actions.
Also, Jared, the entire time you're talking about that section, not that anybody that's listening to this can see it, I'm just like nodding my head like, yeah, that's what you do. Yeah, that's how you make it awesome. Yeah. It sounds a little dirty when I say it, but it's not.
Oh, the only downside to that last session was normally they kind of have an idea of what they want to do next, like what part of Barovia they're going to travel to. That took like 5 hours to do that whole section, and we were just like, okay, we have to stop, even though we wanted to keep playing. So I have no idea where they're going next. So I'm hoping that I can tap dance my way into prepping whatever I need to for the next part of this.
Send them an email. Just ask them.
It's true.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you are turning these folks into regular gamers. Do the email thing.
Yeah,
hey,
man.
What do you guys think your characters are going to do next?
Yeah, get the group chat going or whatever. Get them on a social media platform all at the same place. And what I mean is like Discord or Slack or whatever you want to use.
It is a good idea to let the players know that the GM needs an idea of what they're going to do so they can prep. There's a lot of GMs out there who still think they need to have everything ready and they can't tell the players no, or hey, I can't have you go that way yet because I'm not ready for it. And it's like, you can be upfront with your players that, hey, I need to have an idea of what to prepare for you guys.
Yeah.
Also, Jerry, you could just not do that and then practice your improvising.
Yeah, that's true.
Either one of those work. Anybody out there.
The nice thing is I have enough role-playing stuff to work in that if I had to vamp long enough for them to figure out a direction that I could better prep the next session, I can do that.
You said vamp and you're running Curse.
I know.
It's funny. It's so punny. I took 1d8 pun damage
What is this, vicious mockery?
Yes. He mocked me with his puns.
Welcome to the Dungeon Master's Workshop.
Now that it is 2025, it is 2025, everybody. 2025.
How the hell did that happen?
We wanted to look at our past year in fantasy gaming. We want to touch on the overall state of gaming in the fantasy hobby, and then look at what each one of us was up to when it comes to fantasy gaming in the past year. First off, let's look at some things that stood out to you in fantasy gaming in 2024. What was a big deal that you think happened in this past year? Let's start with Chris.
For me, it's the plethora of games that made development progress or are coming out this coming year, especially Daggerheart and Draw Steel.
Yeah.
That's the big thing that happened this year that I'm like, cool, there's like other kinds of fantasy games other than D&D and the D&D clones that are about to pop up.
Yeah, a lot of this started in 2023 when the whole Wizards debacle happened. And, you know, the whole open game license problem happened. And it basically spurred a whole bunch of creators to start working on games that are fantasy games, fantasy RPGs, but are not D&D. And we're starting to see the fruit of that labor come to be. Because, like, Tales of the Valiant came out this year.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big one.
It did, and they managed to get all 3 of their books out before the end of the year.
I mean, Cobalt Press is a machine, right? They just do stuff. They're like,
Yeah.
this thing's coming out, and then it will come out. Like, no problem. We just know it will.
And I realize D&D has some more hurdles they have to go through, and it's a bigger process. However, it is nice to have all 3 of those books for Tales of the Valiant out in one place, sitting right next to me here.
I actually still need to get my hands on the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Monster Vault and the Player's Handbook, but I don't have the DM's book.
I'm pretty sure that Wolfgang Bauer doesn't have too many people that he has to answer to when he's getting stuff together. Maybe as a COO and maybe like another business partner or something like that. But I'm sure there's not like 8 gazillion like corporate people that he has to go through before he can get a book printed.
There's no corporate investors that you have to deal with like WotC has to deal with through Hasbro.
And do you have another big thing this last year that stands out to you?
Well, I mean, we should probably talk about the elephant in the room and mention that Wizards did release the 2024 edition of the 5th edition rules.
What?
Whatever we're going to call this.
I don't know. I don't even
did?
think I've only like read parts of it. I feel bad about that, but it's just not that interesting.
Chris, you're not supposed to say that on a D&D podcast.
I can say that. We're a fantasy gaming podcast too. But the rules aren't that different.
I have spent a lot more time with the DMG than I have the Player's Handbook because I was interested to see what they do with that. And it's funny seeing how many people are saying that, oh, they addressed this when it was actually in the 2014 DMG. They didn't address it. They just brought it forward, but they put it in a much better order than it was in the last one. And people just gave up looking for things because of how weird the last one was organized.
Pretty
Yeah,
weird.
my understanding is the new DMG is it's a good book. And it's much better organized than the one from the 2014 rule set.
Mike Shea said it was pretty good. Ginny D said it was pretty good. Bob the
Yeah.
World Builder said it was pretty good. That's about all I know about it. Sorry.
I mean, it doesn't start off telling you that you should learn how to build a cosmology as the first thing in the DMG versus how to run a game.
I have not gotten my hands on it yet because I was doing the frugal thing of dragging my feet on figuring out how to acquire the new books. Do I buy them on D&D Beyond along with a physical copy? Do I wait and just get a physical copy? So I, as of yet, have not acquired any of them.
Rent them on D&D Beyond. Rent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can buy the physical books from there now.
Yeah,
though.
that was
You
the
can.
thing is you
That's true.
could do the physical copy and get access on D&D Beyond.
I also have no problem with renting like digital books because they get updated all the time. Physical books don't get updated.
Yeah, they don't. I don't like the idea that someone could decide this thing should no longer be available to me.
Sure thing. I understand that too. I just, this was not a condemnation on the idea of it, just the reality of the situation that we live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things, and unfortunately, I don't think it got as much oxygen as it should have gotten, but the Shadow of the Weird Wizard came out over this last year.
Yeah, it did.
I really like that game system. A lot of what I heard when people were looking at Shadow the Demon Lord is that this looks like a really exciting system. I really like how the mechanics and the characters are built. I don't like the setting because it's too dark and too horror oriented and too grim.
I have a question about that because I mean I'm not as in touch as I used to be, but I still pay attention, right? Like I have all of the tabletop YouTubers and I follow a bunch of blogs and things like that. Nobody talked about this game, really, comparatively speaking. You think it just got buried under everything else that was going on? I couldn't understand why nobody was talking about this game because, like you, a lot of those, I heard all those same things too. Like, why don't we just have another version of this game that's not quite as grimdark as Shadow of the Demon Lord? And I wonder if just Shadow of the Demon Lord came out either at the right time or was part of that Kickstarter push that happened when that game came out, or was just so interesting in its concept that Weird Wizard just kind of gets overshadowed by everything else.
I think there was so much going on with other fantasy RPGs coming out or being worked on this year that also overshadowed it a little bit. I do think it has also been long enough since Shadow of the Demon Lord came out that some of the buzz may have faded.
Yeah, I mean, the Kickstarter did well for it.
It did.
I just did not hear a lot of follow through with people saying, I have it now and this looks awesome. And I really like it. I like a lot of the changes they made because he did do some tweaks to the core system too. It's not just a new setting. He's changed around a few of the things in the game and I really like a lot of it, but I don't know. I also think that maybe beyond the 2024 rules coming out for D&D, Daggerheart is a very big deal and that's taking up a lot of space. Raw Steel is also doing that.
Tons of space. The Cosmere role-playing game.
Yes, out of nowhere, the Cosmere game showed up, and it was like, oh, wow.
It's not fair. It's Brandon Sanderson. If he puts anything on there, it's going to make $10 million if his name's attached. So, you know, it's whatever.
Okay, those are some of the big things from 2024. Let's look at, like, things in our personal gaming that you want to recall from the past year.
So, we did get to play some of the City of Cowls campaign this past spring. If you folks have been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you have heard me talk about Dove and that campaign because it is one of my all-time favorites. Unfortunately, we had to set it aside in April-May timeframe because the GM was getting swamped with a lot of life stuff. He had a friend he needed to help with some stuff and just he had to set running the game aside. He's also admitted that he's struggling a bit with trying to figure out how to wrap up the campaign, because we are very much in the end game of the campaign. Maybe not the actual finale, but the last chapter, at least. Because, well, we've got a demon invasion we're trying to deal with. And there's a very real possibility that we don't win. I mean, me being the goody two-shoes, white hat, big damn hero type, I really hope we can stop the demon invasion and save the world, but there is always the possibility that we can't, and he's kind of been struggling to figure out how to actually wrap everything up. Cygnus de Gyor has abided through the year. We realized when we wrapped up last month that we had been playing that campaign for 2.5 years. For me, that's almost unheard of nowadays, because usually we play for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, whatever, and then we switch to a different campaign, but Scott was just fine running. He abided. He's very much like the dude. If you've ever met him, you'd understand what I mean. We started it sometime in 2021, and it was definitely a beer and pretzels kind of game, but I definitely grew fond of it.
The Scott abides.
Scott abides. Now, I was super excited for Les to step up NGM for the very first time. I have been gaming with them since they were 16 years old, something like that. And it's been 15-ish years. So I was very excited to see them step up and start running the game. And it was very fun to help them create the kitty catters and puppers that are what we're using for our species as, awakened anthropomorphic pets.
Pretty neat.
The absolute legend, Sean Kelly, started running a West Marches style game using Shadowdark for the gaming and BS community. I made 2 characters, but I've only played my mage so far. It's very old school, but I felt comfortable with it because of the people that were involved. Also, Sean dropped today, as we are recording this, a YouTube video on how to do a West Marches style campaign, which made me go into the Discard and go, hey, Sean, can we revive this campaign? So we will probably be getting back to that sometime in the next month.
I still have not looked at Shadow Dark.
It's pretty good. Good game.
It's a big blank spot for me.
It's a very simplified version of 5e because it's got a lot of its bones come from 5e, but it's definitely stripped down to the bare essentials and obviously has a much more old school feel.
And honestly, that was actually another one of the big stories of 2024 that none of us touched on is Shadow Dark. That really kind of exploded for a lot of people.
Yeah, that one's gotten a lot of buzz. The other two things I have in my list, Chris and Jared will both probably talk about, because Chris ran us a playtest of Daggerheart, and Jared has been running the Marodi campaign ongoing, despite the fact that we haven't been able to play since the end of September. And we've got a Tales of the Valiant once a month game for us to kind of kick the tires on the rules.
And I need to figure out when to schedule the next one.
Yeah, it's been a good year for fantasy gaming. And of course, I've done other stuff too because I am polygamerous.
What did your year look like in fantasy gaming, Chris?
Man, I mean, it's pretty solid. Like, I finished up 2 D&D campaigns in the same setting, a homebrew setting that has a lot of elemental affinity stuff baked into it. I talked about it on this podcast before called Eladara. The big story arc closer with a red dragon and its scale-born civilization, Carrick the Raging. It was a thorn in the player's side since like session 2. It was 30 session campaign.
Nice.
Went pretty long. And then the campaign closer, which was like just one session after that, because the whole purpose of this campaign was a MacGuffin hunt to put together basically a reality warping magical machine back together, and then deciding what to do with it. Although they found out as they went that the avatar of darkness that's been like in power for like 5,000 years as the avatar of darkness made this thing so that he could have more sway over this world and eventually be able to rewrite it the way that he wanted to, for reasons that they still don't know. And there'll probably be another campaign arc at some point with some of these players playing either their characters or new characters dealing with some of that stuff. But there was also a powerful Lich trying to get at this thing as they were putting it together and trying to figure out what to do with it, because he was trying to become a living human again because he was mad that he got turned into a Lich.
That's a little bit unusual for a Lich's storyline, isn't it?
It is, right?
Usually they want Lichdom for the power.
When you find out that your wife and child are still alive 100 years later because they were in a magical book that was time locked and they got out, then maybe, you don't want to be a Lich anymore, so you can go, be with your wife and child.
Also missing the taste of pizza.
That too. Pizza, peaches, dried meat, food in general.
Having a tongue.
The other campaign, the Mercenaries of Piran, the third story arc came to a close, and it'll probably be the campaign closer as the characters kept a dangerous weapon from falling into evil's hands, which, once again, a plot by this avatar of darkness to try to cause the world to move closer to his ability to rewrite it in any way he wants. Like I said, I ran Daggerheart a few times. We'll talk about that when we get to Jared stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I ran the first playtest of Draw Steel, which is way different now. So that I have no idea how that game plays. I just got my hands on the most recent version.
That probably changed more from original to now than any of the playtest things that we've talked about.
Yeah, man, that game is way different, which is fine. I'm perfectly... I shouldn't say way different. Okay, that's the side tangent time. It's got a power roll now. So you roll 2d10, and it's got that Power by the Apocalypse feel to it, sort of, where it's like lower than 11, you get the bad result, which is still something. The 11 to 17, I believe, is like the average result, and then a 17 plus is like the good result. And all the powers that player characters get all of them have that scale to them. So they wrote for every character those powers. So I'm like, on that scale, I'm like, okay, that sounds like a lot of work, but sure.
But 500 individual Powered by the Apocalypse moves.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's not super hard, right? Because they're not Powered by the Apocalypse moves. They're basically like, my attack did this, or it did this, or it did this. Because it's that game where whatever you do, it always does something.
Yeah, it does this much damage. It does this much damage, pushes them back. It does this much damage, pushes them back. And disarms
knocks
him.
him prone,
Yeah.
something like that. And everything is like that.
It's not like the age system where you roll doubles, you get to choose a stunt. And like, I have issues with that system because it's difficult to say what you want to do when you don't know what you're going to do until you've rolled the dice.
Right? Because you have to I'm going to hit it, probably, and then roll the dice. And then I'm like, cool, I got some resources to spend now.
Yeah, it's like this counteractive thing where you want the players to like lean into the narrative and describe what they're going to do. But in the age system, you can't really do that because you don't know if you're going to get to do the cool stuff until after you've rolled the dice. So if somebody has a really good idea, if they don't roll well enough, it ends up being I find it a little clunky.
So there's a whole style of game that I've run into that you have to play a little bit different that is like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Eat the Right game has that same thing to it. You have to basically intimate what you're about to do. Like, I'm going to do something like this with this ability. I'm like, cool, go ahead and roll. And then you have some resources that you can spend after the fact to try to do the thing that you said you were going to do. And
I'm
then
trending
maybe do
in this
more.
direction.
Yeah, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's basically you're like, this is my intention. Okay, roll the dice. Cool, I can do my intention plus some stuff. It's a play flow that is not exactly very common amongst most people because that's not how we generally play our games.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I've come to enjoy it for what it is. I actually don't mind playing games like that, but you need to play for like 12 hours to 16 hours to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because if you ever look at like the stat blocks for the monsters or the NPCs in the in Fantasy Age, they have like signature stunts. So in other words, they give, so you're not stopping as the GM to look on a chart. They're giving you like 3 different stunts that are different costs, that these are the things this thing is going to go to, unless you really want to go to the chart and do something different.
Do you know, I've never heard a single person say something good about the age system. It's always been this. This is always the conversation I hear about it.
Yeah, it's got some interesting ideas, and I haven't hated it like when I've played it, but I definitely find it has a little too much latency built into the mechanics as you're playing.
Yeah.
I ran a Dragon Age one-shot at conventions in the before times, and I ended up running into an issue where I had the idea of what the story was going to be, but we ended up having to spend the first half of the game on the introductory encounter because it took everyone that long to kind of figure out what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I didn't know the system well enough to kind of mitigate that problem.
Yeah, man. Any game like that where the procedure feel of the game is so different from what we're used to, you really do need like a while to like figure it out and understand like, oh, this is how this game actually flows. Like, game flow is important. I
will say the 2 times I ran it, the role playing was fantastic because everyone leaned into their characters and it was hilarious.
Sure, man. I'm with you. I love when you get a bunch of good players together that can play a game. I am very much into the like gameplay, especially if I'm going to play a game for a long period of time. Like if the gameplay is boring, then I just don't want to play the game.
Yep.
I like that we just had a very deep digression into the age system, which none of us played in 2024.
I wasn't really talking about age. I was talking about a play style, but age was the example.
I know.
I have nothing bad or good to say about age because I never played it, just what I've heard.
Yeah, and it's kind of on my mind because I am still in my second playthrough of Dragon Age Veilguard. And whenever I am enjoying a video game, I start thinking about how to use it as a tabletop role-playing game. So,
what else did I do? I suppose I should talk about other stuff, huh? Like, is it still me? Am I still talking about stuff?
It's still you.
Okay. I went to Gamehole Con. You two didn't, sadly. This makes me sad.
Yeah, I wanted to. I was planning to, and then I got sick.
But man, it was awesome. But not because I played TTRPGs. I've played 27 unique board games at Gamehole Con. Shout out to my wife Jen and Bridget and Schmitty and Bob and Jerry for participating in many of those 27 games. I also made a lot of YouTube shorts as promo materials for this show, and that was fun. Learning how to put them together and learning how to use After Effects. I didn't know how to use After Effects before I started doing that. I think one of my favorite ones is when Jared's talking about the firmament over Barovia, and I put storm clouds on the top of it.
Seriously, folks, if you are following us and you enjoy our content, go follow our YouTube channel because don't sleep on those shorts. They're amazing.
I edited a bunch of Gnomecast and Thac0 with Advantage episodes, also D&D and role-playing game related. I played some Dragonbane with Jerry. I like Dragonbane. It's fun. If you hate the game system for like, what's that game where you wander around on a hex map that's by the same company that I'm blanking on?
Forgotten Worlds?
Forbidden Lands.
Forbidden
that
Lands.
one.
Yeah.
So if you like Forbidden Lands, but you're like, man, I can't stand having to roll a 6 to succeed, just go play some Dragonbane. Just have to roll under the number. It's fine. Plays like a little like Call of Cthulhu with D20s. Plus you get to be angry ducks. That's a good time.
Isn't Dragonbane the one you ran for us as a one-shot, Jared, where spiders almost killed us?
Yep, that is in my list too.
Okay.
Yeah, monsters are scary in that game because they run that same way as the ones in Forbidden Lands. I ran a short Dungeon World story arc in the Havel's Way setting. It's called The Lost Frontier.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a thing I did. It is concerning the Primal Titan. The Primal Titan is out in the Lost Frontier, and there's a whole sad story about that because of that war is so sad.
Is this something that generated backstory that we might trip over eventually?
I don't think so. I think they're two very different things.
Okay.
Although people on the Patreon might start seeing stuff about the Lost Frontier and like the setting and whatnot and how to play over there because there's a map and things like that. I put out a bunch of PDFs on the Patreon, considering talking about the Patreon PDFs, about the Havel's Way setting, along with some original spells that Jared and I designed. It was a lot of fun to do the layout for that, get the art together, and especially search like old public domain art archives for pieces. And I bought some too. I mean, I have some drive-through money from stuff I did before, so I would just use that to buy art. I'm sure I did other things, but I can't remember. Like January to July is like a blur. Was it this year? Was it last year? Was it the year before? I don't know. Time is a construct.
Well, I think we started Heroes of the Havel's Way at the end of last year, but I think we really got our footing once we started playing in January, February timeframe.
Yeah, I mean, we played a ton of sessions, especially once we started playing not monthly, but like trying to get a story arc done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. Jared, what about your year? Man, I talked a lot.
It's okay.
My throat hurts.
So I have my Curse of Strahd game. It's my first face-to-face game that I've had since the pandemic. Well, let me rephrase that. I played with the same group of people briefly last year, not using any adventure at all. And that one kind of fell apart in part because, my wife had to have bypass surgery. That kind of limits your time to play games.
That throws a wrench in things.
Yeah, so the core group is the same people, but now we're up to 5. And we started playing this Curse of Strahd game. And really, this is my first gaming group that I've had since the pandemic that's face-to-face. I've run lots of things online. Oh my gosh, I am getting back so much energy from them. I love all of my online people. That's not but there is a difference in the energy when you're sitting there with other people. And also, it is much nicer because when I was running at the game store, there are people that I love them to death, but they are gamers first. So it was very possible to have an hour-long digression about a rule that they did not like. And that just saps the energy completely out of me when I'm trying to run a game.
I'm shaking my head at those people.
Yes.
Stop that.
Yeah, see, I consider myself gaming first, but I don't want to talk about rules like that. I'm a gamer first. I'm not a rules lawyer first.
Yeah. And the thing is, I would handle things differently if I had not been running those games in the game store. But there is almost this expectation of, unless somebody is abusive, I am going to take them at the table because I am running this as a public thing.
Sure.
And that kind of changes things a little bit.
It does.
So that's another thing that's nice about having this home group for Curse of Strahd.
Yeah, man, your home curated group is awesome, right? Like you can curate people that are at your table.
I've been ridiculous about this one because I ordered them like custom plastic flats from Hero Forge.
Those little standees are amazing.
Yeah, I got a couple in my house because Bridget bought one. They look awesome. And they're so sturdy. They're fantastic.
Okay, any of my players who are listening to this, you did not hear this, but depending upon how things go with the Tales of the Old Margrave, I'm considering getting my players those for their characters.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that's what you bought them for Christmas as presents.
No, because they don't have characters yet.
They have so many species up on there now too.
Honestly, I can say what I got them for Christmas because we're gonna see each other this Saturday, and this is coming out
Oh, you can
later. I got I got everyone a blind dice bags from Easy Roller Dice.
Oh.
So I got a set of dice for everyone, but no one knows what they look like.
Shiny math rocks, dice goblins. Yeah.
Yes, dice goblins. Yes.
Oh, goodness. So I was also continuing to run my Marodi Empire game, which I would say we maybe had a game for 75% of the year, because this was a rough year for scheduling for that game.
Honestly, since we lost October through December, it might be better to say 50% of the year, because we had some hiccups. We had some hiccups along the way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love this game, and I feel like Kazina really got some interesting personal story beats along the way, because she got to rescue her sister from the hag, and just it's been a really great campaign. It's just you don't think that getting 5 people all on the same page as far as when we're getting together would be that hard.
No, it is.
It's tricky, man. Like my Mass and the Arlotep game, we didn't play that game for like a month and a half, because we have a quorum rule where 5 of the 6 people have to show up or we don't play. And I changed it. I'm like, we're not doing this anymore because I want to play the game. If 4 of the 6 people show up, we're playing the game. Suffer.
Yeah.
I had to start doing that with some of my game store games, because it was like, we keep showing up here at the game store and we're not doing anything else. We're just waiting for people to show up. So I turned it into like if 50% plus 1 person show up, we're going to run.
On the bright side, I always have a backup game like handy. So we played the Arkham horror role-playing game. That game is not done yet, everybody. I hope the final book is better than the starter box that came out. And we played Crash Pandas from Grant Howitz, if anybody knows what that game is. Super fun.
Oh my goodness. This was the year that we started Heroes of Havel's Way. So
yeah,
I am very invested in my paladin. I really like him.
I'm very invested in your paladin too. I'm also very invested in the druid. I'm also very invested in the raccoon. Like very invested in the raccoon.
I mean, the raccoon's kind of the protagonist of the story.
I can't wait until he gets put into a position where he probably has to sacrifice himself for everybody else.
Oh, don't do that to me.
The raccoon is the R2-D2 of our story.
I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine right here. Just give me some berries. I just want a cookie. Can I have a cookie, please?
We did. I did run a one-shot of Dragonbane. I personally like the system. We had a really difficult time because there was a swarm of bats in the adventure. And normally, I have a whole blog post about this, but I shall recap. Normally, the monsters have a script of like 6 different things that they do. So you as the GM are not deciding what the monster does other than that it is going to attack. And then that script will pop up and show you what they are doing. The bats only had 3 things that they did, and one of them was to stun people. So it was constantly like stunning people and then attacking, because there wasn't that full range of 6 things for it to do. And I think it made it a lot worse than it would have been otherwise.
Can I ask you a question about the bats? I have some questions about this game, because I want to talk about this game for a second. Sorry, I'm like segueing us everywhere.
No, that's okay.
So the bats were a monster. Were they just like regular bats? Were they like monstrous bats of some sort?
It was a swarm of bats.
Just a swarm of bats.
Right, a swarm of regular bats.
Here's the problem with the Dragonbane game. The monsters have certain rules that certain player abilities, character abilities, can't affect monsters in a bunch of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
That drives me crazy when it's like something that doesn't feel like a monster. Now, if it's something terrifying and scary and whatnot, which is what, in my mind, a monster should be in that game, I'm perfectly fine with that rule set. But like, there were a bunch of times where these designers are throwing monsters into these adventures that don't feel like monsters, or designing monsters that don't feel like monsters. Bats should just be an antagonist. They shouldn't be a monster. That's all I'm saying.
And what's interesting about that is there is a table in there of animals. And yeah, not everything uses that script. It's monsters specifically that uses that script.
Yeah.
And there is a whole table of animals that do not have a script. They just do like 3 points of damage or whatever.
Dude, man, swarm of bats should totally just be an animal or an antagonist, whatever they classify those things as.
I mean, that swarm of bats nearly TPK'd us.
Yes.
I believe we ended the playtest / session by being like, we're running away.
Yeah.
We have made it to the location we needed to go to investigate the thing we needed to investigate, and we are done because a swarm of bats just nearly killed us all.
Now, if it was a sentient swarm of bats that talked to you in your mind while it tried to kill you, That's a different story. That's
Yeah.
a monster to me, right? Like Swarm of Bats, not a monster. Just throwing it out there.
It is interesting because I like the system.
Me too.
But yeah, the decision about some of the things in the adventures are not quite what I would do for that.
Dude, man, the killer app for that game is absolutely the initiative system. I love the initiative system. And there's some fun things that you can do as a game, as a team of players to manipulate the initiative system to like for team tactics. Like we would have our bard use that ability that would give everybody like a boon on all their rolls at the beginning of one round, and then it wouldn't wear off until his next turn. So then we just have him go at the end of the next round. It was so like there's just like little things like that you can do in that game. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play. The gameplay is a lot of fun.
When I did the review for it, I said it felt very old school, but my brain didn't get stuck on that. I hate the way certain old school games do things because they want to retain how they were done. You know, and obviously I know this is actually an old school game for like the Scandinavian countries, because this is a remake of a game that's been around since you know, forever.
I have zero knowledge of what the old game is like.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've just read up on the history of it, and one of the reasons it has ducks is because the original campaign setting was actually for RuneQuest.
Sure.
And then they drifted it into their own setting.
Dude, man, one of the best stories I heard is friends of the show, fellow gnomes, Thac0 and Bob Everson. A bunch of them were playing this game, and they just played a party of angry ducks. Just roaming around being angry ducks. And when they heard that humans were the ones that like magicked up some ducks, we're like, that's propaganda. We don't believe that. And they would just start spreading that ducks weren't made by humans, like around as much as they could. It was hilarious. But that, you know, that's that was their game of Dragonbait. I thought it was, I thought that was pretty good, but that you could do that.
The other thing that I did was I played in Chris's Daggerheart one shot. I like that system. I am very interested to get a chance to play it again.
Dude, are you ready for like the next segue where we talk about this game for like 15 minutes?
Absolutely. I enjoyed it as well. I am curious of how it plays as a campaign. Because like I know by the end of I think we did a 2-parter. We played twice. And by the end of it, my character had some pretty major complications from having seriously failed a roll. Like if I remember correctly, she got dropped and we had to do the death rules.
She did.
Which meant that I had to make a roll, and I ended up coming out of that roll with basically the loss of one of the resources you have towards what you get to roll. Very interesting game. A lot of fun. And fellow gnome Josh Story drew us the most adorable picture of all of our characters.
Yes.
I like Josh. Josh is a great person. Really enjoyable
Josh is fantastic.
person. That game is great. Like I can't wait to get my hands on the full game. I like the hope die and the whatever. What's the other die called? The bad die. The despair.
Fear.
Fear. Thank you.
Hope and fear.
I keep wanting to say despair because the Star Wars thing is in my head, right?
Yeah.
But it's hope and despair. That system's pretty fun. The 2D12, I like that feel a lot. The power cards are a good time. I like that you can play the game with like miniatures on just like a table. Like you don't need a map necessarily. Like you don't need a grid to play the game. And I think that's probably that's the way that I played it best, was when we played it in my house. Because I ran like 2 different sessions of it, I think. 2 different sets of sessions of it. I would just use like standees and just throw things on the table and be like, cool, these are trees. This is like the field and whatnot. Like here's stuff in the way. And then there's the bad guys. They can run around.
It reminded me a lot of how we were playing 13th Age at the game store, where we had miniatures just so we knew who was right next to other people or who was far away, but you're not counting specific, you know, distances or anything.
Like Angela, I'm looking forward to seeing if the play from session to session and different kinds of play actually are feel good, right? Like,
yeah.
I still don't know what that game exactly does super well. It feels great to play it, and the dice rolling is fun, and the skill challenge, the skill checks they feel good and whatnot. And using the power cards is a good time. There's fighting, which I mean, it's a game about fighting, but like if I just go scene, fight, I mean, most tables that I'm sitting at are a bunch of improvising voice actors, because you know this is the Critical Role game. It's still fun to play in those situations and whatnot, but like, where's the game there, right? Where's the other game other than I hit you with my sword or use my power card on you? But, you know,
Right.
4th edition worked pretty well, and I played tons of that, so.
For a further segue, I do like that in the recent years, we have seen a little bit more of a rehabilitation of 4th edition's reputation.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that it was perfect. I'm not even saying it was the right move to make at the time, but it was not the game that some people were trying to say that it was as far as it being terrible.
I love
The
it.
only reason I have not revisited 4th edition is the characters can be clunky without that character maker.
It's true.
Yeah.
You know, and like if I had access to a character maker that had the rules so I could plug in, you know, the level, the species, all the other stuff, and get the printout of the cards, I'd run a 4th edition game because it was a lot of fun. It's just, it's kind of clunky to try and do it standard, just a character sheet off to the side and get anywhere past 3rd level.
And, you know, speaking of just renting a game, 4th edition was your prototype for that because
Yeah.
all of those tools are gone now.
Yep.
I think you could still go find somebody that has character builders out there, but not like that one. That one was great.
Yeah.
I've looked, I remember what I did is I still have all of my files for my characters. I have nothing that can read them.
yeah.
I've been told there's certain things that could read them, and I'm like, it didn't work for me, but I'm not that technically savvy. So,
Mhm.
I'm fine with it because we're going to get modern 4th edition and draw steel. Modern game design ideas from 4th edition for this new space. I'm down with that. Also, we didn't need 30 levels.
No.
We did not need 30 levels. 20 was fine.
Yes. Well, and it was funny because you could tell all of the stuff that was coming out towards the end, like the Neverwinter guide, was not worried about going up to 30th level. One last thing I wanted to say about Daggerheart is that me, because I have very specific feelings on Rangers, I love that Ranger. Like, it does what I want a Ranger to do. When I think of a Ranger, that it does what I wanted the Ranger to do. And kudos to them for designing it that way. I was very happy with it.
Dude, man, favorite version of the fighter in any role-playing game ever is the 4th edition fighter. The idea of the mark condition is like the best thing ever in a role-playing game.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I actually felt like a tank.
Mm.
I felt like I could actually tank stuff.
Definitely. Speaking of Rangers, I did do a breakdown of what I think Rangers should have as core components and what Artificers should have as core components on my blog.
Ooh,
In part,
I saw that pop up.
yeah, you know, part of it was the Artificer. I wanted to do that one because I feel like the Artificer has drifted into something that it really wasn't to begin with. And that is like every Artificer is kind of assumed to build machines that produce magic. And that really wasn't the original thing. It was actually literally a person that knows how to make magic items. So it's perfectly fine if you know how to make swords and make swords that are magic. And I think the bringing the tinker aspect of gnomes into it kind of drifted that concept a little bit more than, you know, originally. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying there should probably be more breathing space for that person that just wants to be a smith that is just magically awesome at making weapons.
Did you say it was tainted by gnomes?
Yes. I know nothing should actually be tainted by gnomes. Everything is made better with gnomes.
What are you talking about? We all eat gnomes. We have no ground to stand on here. We all just got to stop with this. If it's tainted by gnomes, it's tainted by gnomes. We're a bunch of cannibals.
Shh.
I won't go through all of them, but like every year I stop and think, man, I wish I would have gotten more reviews done. And then I started looking at just the fantasy reviews that I did. And you know what? I don't feel bad about how many fantasy reviews I did last year.
You're a machine, Jared.
This is Jared. I don't think I did enough. Everybody's looking at him side-eyed like, what are you talking
Don't
about?
come to me. I don't
Are you feeling
think I'm
okay?
going to get a review out for my. I don't think I'm going to get my second review out this month. Oh, it's okay. It's fine. It's. We're all good.
Then go look at his other blog. Let me just put out another dozen this year.
There's a bit. So does anybody else have a last thing about their personal gaming from 2024 before we start looking forward?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Now that we've talked about our 2024, what is something that's coming up in 2025 that you are looking forward to in fantasy gaming? We'll go back to Chris this time. What are you thinking about for next year?
You want me? I got like a list.
Sure.
Sure. Like more Heroes of Hal's Way. Give me more
Oh, yeah.
Heroes of Hal's Way.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing all of part 2 to the patrons, which is like 4 sessions worth of play in one go while releasing the rest over time to everybody else. I'm also looking forward to putting together more PDFs about the Havel's Waste setting, the original spells that me and Jared are designing, and anything else any of us would think would be fun to put out there. I like putting out PDFs. It's fun to do that layout now and again. I am very much looking forward to playing both Daggerheart and Draw Steel at some point in this year. I have a lot of things going that I want to do this year, which usually I end up getting to do all of them. So this is not like an unachievable goal for me. Playing this Rapscallion game that I set up. We've had our session 0 and our session 1, and both were a ton of fun. I haven't played a PBTA game in a while. That feels really PBTA. Like I play public access, and that is a PBTA engine-ish game, but it's not a PBTA game.
An evolution.
Yes, yes.
Just to clarify too, Rapscallion is a fantasy pirate game too. It's not just a regular pirate game. It is. Yeah.
I mean, it's got you make a weird world with weird magic and stuff inside of it. That's why I included it here. Our particular setting, we decided to be like, we want to use the real world, but like 4,000 years in the future when the polar ice caps melted. And things went really, really wrong. There's like oil witches and like there's like a Disney cruise ship, Disney ghost cruise ship that sails around. And they're really nice to you if you get on there, but at night they try to eat you. Stuff like that, right? Like that group of people is a bunch of ridiculous human beings. I take my gaming pretty seriously most of the time. That group, we are generally just having a pretty baller time. And I bring as much seriousness to it as I can, but it's just a lot of fun. So there's that. Finishing up my Massive Nyarlathotep campaign so I can run a Star Wars game. Space opera, space fantasy. Fight me on that. I don't care.
It's swords and brain magic.
Yes.
And
artifacts. Psionics and laser swords and artifacts, right?
Yeah.
But the real trick is that I'm probably going to take, because I don't really like Edge of the Empire system, whatever that game, I forget what the name of that game system is called.
Oh, the Genesis.
Yeah, I don't really like the Genesis system all that much. It's fine. Like, it's a perfectly fine game system. It's just not really good for me. I've run a few games in it. So I'm looking to get my hands on Daggerheart and then reskinning and redesigning a bunch of stuff with the Daggerheart system for Star Wars, because it feels right. And then more Streets of Avalon gaming. I'm pretty happy with what I've designed so far. It's playing pretty well in the playtests. I think I've gotten about 20 sessions with the rules as is. I've only had to make like one minor tweak to the core gameplay to make it feel a little less like automatic success. I just basically had to bump target numbers for like what is easy and normal and hard up a little bit. Up by 1, actually. Strangely enough, doing that makes succeeding feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if you're not just feel like you're succeeding all the time, psychologically, like when you do succeed, it feels great. I'd like to see this game in the public's hands either near the end of this year or early next year, and maybe even earlier than that if I decide to ash can it together for people to play it. So yeah, that's me, 2025.
Very cool.
Okay, Ange, what are you looking forward to in 2025?
I mean, the thing that's coming right up around the corner is diving into Tales of the Valiant with Tales of the Valiant with Tales of the Old Margrave. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to be running it on Shard. I have paid for a Kobold Press subscription on Shard that gives me access to all of the Tales of the Valiant rules, plus the Margrave adventures. The adventures, there's some interesting little quirks with the adventures, is because it is an older adventure that was put together for Pathfinder.
Yeah, it was Pathfinder and then converted to early 5th edition. This was just barely after the OGL, or the OGL for 5th edition came out.
There were certain things that weren't updated in it because there were a lot of times some of the target numbers were really, really high. And I'm like
a DC 31 in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm like, did they want people to fail? Is that what the design is here? It's like, no. It's Pathfinder levels. So I have to basically do that adjustment and all that. But I'm really looking forward to diving into this. I have decided that I am pairing up my players and asking them to make characters that are strongly connected to each other. Siblings, lovers, companions, whatever. These are characters that come into the adventure together with very strong connections. And I'm doing this to hopefully counteract some of the issues I have with this combination of players. I adore these people. Sometimes running for them is hard for me because they tend to turtle a little bit and they don't always go towards the adventure. So I've paired them up in ways that I'm hoping will counteract that a little bit.
Smart.
The nice thing is if they run off into the Margrave, that's way worse than if they just go through the adventure. I mean, honestly, the Margrave, the best I could explain it is if you had a domain in Ravenloft that was just a forest that does not like you, that's kind of what the Margrave is like.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've got to flesh out what my setup is going to be and what my hooks are to get them into adventuring. And I actually discovered a speed bump because I forgot that I am supposed to run my Savage Supers game on Monday, and I haven't prepped for that yet, so I have to do that this weekend. And then after I run that on Monday, I can finish prepping for Session 0 the following Saturday.
Oh man, you better get to laying those tracks. I mean, I know that train be coming, Angie. Lay those tracks.
The train is fine as long as the scenery is interesting. It's never actually a railroad track. It's just I still need to know where people are going.
No, I was referencing you being like, my version of prep is I'm laying tracks as the train is coming. Sorry, that was the joke I was making. I wasn't saying that you were a linear. Yeah, you say it so often. I figured you pick up on it.
Further into the year, Les will probably wrap up the Poison Kingdom. I'm looking forward to seeing where things go with that. After that Saturday group should be diving back into City of Cowls. If Tristan is ready for it, we will see. I'm also very excited to get back into the Marodi game because I love that character, and I do want to see where things go with that.
11th level, I have things planned.
Yeah, it's like I stab things so well. I haven't really looked at any other specific games that are coming out in the year. I have some non-fantasy stuff that I've got planned for the year. Like I have another Tales from the Loop scenario I've got to put together. So it will be involving exchange students in the 1980s. I have to put together a Savage Worlds game based on Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West because I have put that on the schedule for Origins, so I can't get out of doing it now.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be fun.
One thing that I will say, if you're going to run Tales from the Old Margrave, there is a part where you find a broken sword and you can give them clues to find the other half of the sword, and if they reforge it, it is a Vorpal sword. Don't do that. Nobody wants a Vorpal sword in their game unless it's like for the final fight against the final boss and then you're done, because we had that Vorpal sword for a third of the campaign, and for a third of the campaign it was a crapshoot on whether something survived that character making their attack.
This ain't Pathfinder.
But also I have a blog post about running Tales from the Old Margrave, so...
You have a blog post, and I also have you on DM.
Yes.
I feel like the joke is, I have a blog post about insert topic, and Jared's probably got it.
Maybe.
You're not wrong.
So, Jared, what about you in 2025? Are you looking forward to in fantasy gaming? Is it writing more blog posts?
Well, yeah, there's that, because I don't write enough. But honestly, I am really curious to see what the monsters look like in the monster manual, because stuff that has changed is what's really interesting me in some of this. So like, I'm curious to see what the monster math looks like now. I will be getting back to writing more spells, and part of why I wasn't writing spells is because 1, I got overwhelmed, and 2, I started seeing that there was different expectations for certain types of spells. For example, healing is like twice as effective now in 2024.
Yeah, that's a thing.
That's something to kind of work into your expectations there. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to picking back up with my Marodi game. I absolutely love our Heroes of Havel's Way game, so I'm looking forward to that.
I forgot to mention that one, but Chris mentioned that one. I am excited about it.
I love my Curse of Strahd game. That one is going so well, and I'm super happy with that. So continuing all of that is stuff I want to do in 2025. As far as things coming out, I kind of wonder if this is going to get the same kind of thing that happens to Shadow of the Weird Wizard, and that is 13th Age 2nd Edition, because I'm really excited to see what that looks like. And I haven't heard as much buzz around it as I would have expected.
I'm sad because I don't think anybody cares.
Yeah.
And I do. I'm looking
Yes.
forward to seeing what they do with it, but I don't think anybody else cares.
One of my regular games at the game store was me getting to actually play a ranger in 13th Age, and I had a whole lot of fun in that system. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like, and hopefully maybe having people notice that it came out.
Yeah, that is one of the issues we kind of have right now in the hobby related to fantasy RPGs is there is a lot going on. There's a lot out there, but that means some stuff may not get as much attention as it deserves.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and I'm sure nothing else is going to happen in 2025 except for us gaming. Everything else in 2025 is going to be completely smooth sailing, and nothing could possibly look like any kind of dumpster fire.
Thank you for having that positive attitude, Jared. I know that it won't happen, but at least you give me hope that it might happen.
No time for rest, you two. Get on with your downtime research.
Wrapping us up and getting us out of here. Every episode, we're going to look for something related to D&D that we want to pass along to you, our listeners. It might be products, websites, videos, or podcasts, but it will be always something that we think will enhance your D&D experience. First, though, we must do our Eldritch Invocation. We've got a Patreon now, so if you would like to help us do this show and provide some additional content for you, a lot of what Chris mentioned today, we'd love it if you decide to join. We've got our own Discord, and we'll be releasing additional supplementary material like the map Chris has made for the campaign setting we're currently playing in.
I mean, that's like the least.
Yeah,
of
I like. We need to update.
Yeah, we need to update this one.
You want to play the kind of druid that Andrew's playing? You can play it. It's there. Like the whole that you can play that character, that class, that version of the star, the Circle of Stars druid. It exists. Eventually, I'll have stuff for Jared's paladin. You could play that stuff too.
Pretty neat swords up there.
That is patreon.com/Thac0WA.
You can also, see Monty stats at some point.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff up there. Help us do this thing. Now, the thing I wanted to pimp this week. As I've been saying elsewhere, I started reading fiction again. One of the ones that I finished up around Christmas that I think folks who love D&D will enjoy is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. This was a recommendation to me from previously mentioned Gnome Josh, and it is a hilarious novel with a surprising amount of heart. The concept is a mashup of Groundhog's Day, time loop, mixed with a Chosen One narrative. The main character, Davy, is from our world and is so sick of this crap that she's flipping the script and going in a different direction. It's not directly D&D related, but it's got enough D&D references that I think you will be amused. And the sequel is coming out this spring. We'll have a link to the book in the show notes. It's hilarious. I loved it.
I can't refuse a recommendation like that. I've just bought it on Audible. I can't wait to listen to it. Also, you said thing I want to pimp out earlier, and I had this really weird diatribe in my head about is that what prostitutes say these days? They have pimps, or do they say they have managers that set up their stuff for them? I'm curious about this now, and I'm wondering if what is appropriate to be saying. I might cut this all out. We'll find out. It's me. Oh yeah, it's me. Surviving Strange Hollow. I'm working on stuff for Surviving Strange Hollow, so this is obviously self-serving in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to get paid regardless. But I really like this book that they put together. It's very, very different. It's got stats and things like that. It's got subclasses and a new class, a new playable undead race. It's got some new feats and things like that. But there's fiction that has been written by a bunch of pretty prominent writers, including Ed Greenwood and others. And along with that fiction, the rules come from the fiction. The fiction was written, the rules come from that. There's also, if you've not seen the art from this book, Emily Hare, she is the artist. She does hand-painted watercolors for all of this stuff.
Ooh.
And she is painting new pieces, a bunch of new pieces for it. And the art books are gorgeous. And it's watercolors, but it's got that Where the Wild Things Are vibe to it. A lot of the creatures kind of give me that feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. I like that.
The little Grimm's fairy tale thing going on there, Last Unicorn Labyrinth.
I love me some good art.
Right? A lot of new monsters, rules for non-combat dangers and hazards, but all that stuff. Plus these adventures that we're putting together. Plus, you can still, the Kickstarter has been over for a while, but you can still go and pre-order the book if you want. I will have a link in the show notes for that. You can see the prominent list of authors. Dale Kingsmill also wrote on this. If you don't know who she is, just go. You're not paying attention to the MCDM space or the TTRPG blog space. Go check out the Eldritch Lorecast. She's on that all the time. Brian Steele, I think you interviewed him at one point in time, didn't you, Ange?
I did.
He's been on the Gnomecast. James Hake, Dan Dillon. Like, these are super good names, right? Like, the designers are quality. So check it out if you're interested in something like that.
I'm just going to throw this one in here. Laying off Dan Dillon was one of the dumbest things that Wizards did.
Dumbest. I'm not like the hugest Dan Dillon fan, but like as far as like his design, but I know his design is good. Like, I don't like it, but I know it's also really good. Like, it's a personal preference thing more than anything.
Yeah. So I've been a fan of Shannon Appleklein's work detailing the history of the RPG industry. And you can find that in Designers and Dragons, which goes through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. We haven't gotten any. We have gotten an appendix for some of the later things that have come out, but it's not a formal book yet. But there is a blog post now that Shannon Appelklein wrote, and it goes over everything that happened in 2024 in the RPG industry, and it does it much better than what I was thinking of trying to do on this show. So you should go to that blog and read it. And the funny thing about that was, as I was putting this link in the notes, Chris was posting a link in our Discord saying, "Hey, look at this."
Yeah, I just got done reading it. I'm like, this is a great, like, I was looking for stuff about 2024 in role-playing games. And like, Shannon Appelklein, I'm like, well, I should just go read that because I won't have to do any other work. Right? Like, it's over now. We're done.
We are happily part of the Polygamers Podcast Network, helping you run and play your best games. We think you'll enjoy another Polygamers podcast like
The Gnomecast. Several gnomes from Gnomes 2 get together to talk about gaming topics and themselves in an effort to entertain you and avoid being thrown in the stew, which I probably will be the next time I'm on it because I talked about how we're cannibals.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Clone 79 coming up.
We have used up all of our resources, so it's time for a long rest. I hope this adventure was rewarding for you. We hope you'll explore with us when we start our next adventure.